Okay, so here is the freshly reassembled OS FS Alpha 110 engine that I just replaced the crankshaft bearings in and the connecting rod. Now, this is not going to be the first time that I fire this up on this video. I've had it running a few times, and those of you that have seen the previous videos on this engine realize that I had some issues with getting what the review article, the only review article I could find on this engine, getting the peak RPM that review article said for certain specified props. Now today I'm going to be running a new FSa-110 and I believe the review article says that with this prop this thing should turn about 9,200 something RPM. Well, the first time I ran it today after reassembling it, the compression didn't feel all that good, and I reset the valves and all that stuff. Just didn't feel that good. So I ran it. The compression came up a little bit, but it was only peaking out at like maybe 7,300 RPM. And I was running some 12%, 12.5% fuel in it. And I was like, well, maybe I just don't have the timing set right on this thing. Now, the timing gear on this engine is odd in that it's got a scribe mark on the gear itself, but then one of the lobes, the outward-facing lobe, has a dot on it. I couldn't find anything about how to time these engines, so I just went by the standard OS timing, which is there's a mark and it goes in line with the push rods. Now these push rods are not at the same angle that Surpass or other OS engines are. They're a little bit more vertical, and that scribe mark really wouldn't let me put it. It was just going to be way off to one side if I tried to deviate from this. So I was like, well, that had to be right. Well, for the last hour or so on the stand, I had half the engine disassembled and I was trying that timing gear purposely out one tooth this way and one tooth this way, and the engine just absolutely positively would not run like that. It wouldn't even fire up. So I'm like, well, it has to be timed correctly. And now it's got excellent compression. I mean, this thing it's got really good compression. Doesn't look like it or feel like it now, but after I just ran it, it felt a lot stronger. So I just tweaked it out with that 12% fuel, and I had it running at 8,100 RPM. Now, the fuel I'm running in it now, this time, as I'm letting it cool, is a completely different story. But suffice it to say that this is like 23% nitro, 18% oil, and of that 18%, 92% is synthetic, and the other 8% is castor. It's from a jug of Healy fuel that a friend gave me, and I cut it and mixed my methanol with it and made what I made. So anyway, this run is going to feature an OSF plug, an FSa-110 prop, and this strange 23, I think it's 23 or 22% nitro fuel with 18% oil content. So, I mean, the engine runs. It starts fine. It idles good. I had it idling at 1,800 RPM. Let's see if we can reproduce that. Now, like the 155 I had, this throttle has these marks on it because it's basically the same type of carb, and you really go by those marks. It'll go beyond the lowest mark. There's 3 marks on it. It'll go beyond each mark, but that isn't really where you want to run it at all. In fact, the mark for full throttle is almost a little bit too wide, and you can see the RPM drop just a little bit if you actually go to that point. So I don't particularly care for this design. I don't particularly care for this carb, because of all the design OS engines like this I've had, and I haven't had very many, they all ran like shit, in my opinion. And this engine in particular is a ragged out piece of crap. It's not, I'm not bashing the engine, it's that when I bought it, it was a ragged out piece of crap. And it's still a ragged out piece of crap. But it makes videos. So let's fire it up and see what it does. Prime this thing. Should be a good starting position. pinch test. Okay, so there's your run. That is, see, now it seems like it's got a lot stronger compression when it heats up, which is weird. There's just, I don't know. You can still detect hints of quality here. Hints of quality of the OS of old, but not a lot. And that would be that it still likes to idle pretty low, and it was holding an idle. But this engine, this particular engine, this exact engine that I have, in my mind, judging externally and the way it performs, is just a ragged out piece of crap. Or that engine in the review article was a stellar, absolute piece of art. Because this engine just absolutely positively cannot come close to the RPM figures in that review article, for whatever reason. This engine is in the best condition that I can possibly get it. Those that don't recall, when I first bought it, it had a brand new piston and sleeve, and I just put a connecting rod in it and new bearings. It has great compression. Really isn't much more you can replace on it. It draws fuel well, so there's no leaks in the carb or intake or anywhere. I mean, it's in as good internally condition as it possibly can be, as far as I'm concerned. Externally, it's pretty rough. But I mean, there's your run, and that was absolutely all this engine could possibly do with this fuel, this prop, this glow plug, my time on it, and the atmospheric conditions. So I hope you enjoyed watching this engine run. I cannot say whether I'll ever run this engine again, but I mean, it runs pretty decent for what it is. Thank you for watching.